Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. Coming to you from January Junction, I'll be your host, Dave Trumbore. Joining me as always, he's the leader of the Snow Gypsies. He's Sean Paul Ellis. How's it going, sir?
David. I'm doing well, buddy. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, but it's a little cold in here. I'm not 100% sure what's going on. It's a little nippy, a little frosty, I guess you could say.
Something that looked like a ghost just held my nose for a second.
Oh, I thought it was here with me.
No.
Looking around.
That chill that you feel in the air is our good buddy and returning guest, Joe Gallo.
Surely you jest.
Joe Gallo. Yeah, it's surely you jest. Joe Gallo, welcome back, buddy.
Thanks, good to be here.
Welcome back, Joe.
I have some kind of small rodent here in the studio with me. It appears to be, pardon me, Pete.
Oh, we were supposed to have a exterminator come in and take care of that, but
that would really be the best thing to do in this situation.
He's off for the holidays.
End of episode.
Just Groundhog extermination for the holidays.
Problem solved.
That's right.
The rest of this entire conversation is Joe reading Amazon reviews for rodent traps.
For various exterminators, Yelp reviews. Please submit your best exterminator reviews to SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. No, we're obviously talking about the Rankin Bass holiday classic, Jack Frost, tonight. How could you have guessed anything else? So last week, if you remember, we covered the classic Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the annual special that's played each and every year around this time. This one tonight, it's another Rankin Bass, and it is played every year, but for whatever reason, I personally grew up never having seen Jack Frost. Sean, is that the same situation for you?
I think I had an idea of but I don't believe I'd ever really watched it until Mr. Gallo had recommended this. So this was a joy to watch.
Yeah, and
it was a joy to get into something that I'd never seen before. So
yeah, exactly. I feel the same way, and we want to thank Joe for bringing it to our attention. It's something that we were kind of like sort of aware of, but just it did not even register with us to cover this. So Joe, just give us kind of a quick why did you want to bring this specific one to us?
Well, this is just one that I know from growing up. And I remember the songs, and I have to say that on watching 30 years later, they're not as good as I thought they were.
Right.
But they have stuck with me, which says something. And then also just the bizarre economy of January Junction and the ice money. There's a bunch of weird visuals that stick with you for a long time from this story. You have probably only seen it a dozen times, but it gets in there. There's a bunch of weird little stuff. And,
yeah, I actually really like that. That's what I found so charming about it, and we'll definitely spend the next hour or so talking about those things. It's something that for me, since I hadn't seen this before, I mean, obviously everybody is so familiar with the story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer because it's got one of the catchiest and most memorable songs from pretty much everybody's childhood, at least here in the States, and you can't not remember that stuff. With Jack Frost, like the songs for me, I didn't recognize really any of them except maybe Me and My Shadow. And that might actually be it. I don't think another one really registered for me. So for me, this was kind of like new, like watching it all for the first time. So it was really delightful. It was a lot of fun for me. Sean, how was your experience watching this for maybe the first time, or at least the whole way through?
I want to say that this was.
Yeah.
I believe this to be my first time watching this. It was interesting, especially kind of following in the coattails of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer,
right,
and sort of seeing some very bizarre adult themes in Rudolph, and seeing some of those carried over into this. I have to wonder, did Rankin Bass, when they would sit down, did they kind of look at each other across like a long boardroom table and be like, so classic holiday story, we're gonna inject misogyny at some point. We're gonna make it really, really offensive towards women.
Can we make this
at some
a little
point
rapier?
Yeah.
It's for kids, right? So
yeah.
It needs to be a little rapier.
So there were a couple of moments watching this where I was like, ooh, I'm a little bit uncomfortable. And
I didn't pick up too many of them. Maybe a couple that I know you're definitely thinking of.
Yeah.
But for me, honestly, the whole thing felt fairly pure, especially it felt like a sanitized version of what we had watched. Not sanitized, but sanitized version of Christmas jokes of Rudolph, because we really ripped that one apart with like a postmodern criticism of that movie, because it does not
Right.
hold up in a modern environment whatsoever. We basically got to the point, if you guys didn't listen to that episode yet, we got to the point of our reviews and recommendations where it's like, yes, I will let my kids watch this because it is part of the like cultural zeitgeist that's been going since 1964 when this thing aired. But then I will sit them down and explain to them all the things that are wrong with it. With Jack Frost, I feel like you don't have to do that as much. It's more fantastical, it's more imaginative, and it's less commercial too, which I actually really appreciate.
Sure.
Yeah. But
There
let's kind of. Did you have a final thought before we dig
Oh
into this?
no,
Here?
there were so many moments in this where even the conceit itself, I was
Mhm.
like, this just seems like this immortal, like, I don't know, frozen ghost is got like weird teenage boner dreams, and he's
Yeah, right.
So
What
pure,
would a
like I was
15-year-old
saying,
do
yeah.
if he was immortal and invisible?
Yeah,
Go
right.
creep on human girls. That's exactly
yeah,
what he'd
yeah.
do.
It was very interesting to watch and see the motivation for a lot of these characters. And I know that, obviously it's a children's story,
Mhm.
and they're trying to work in certain elements, and I can see the main idea or theme being love, something
Right.
very simple and something very honest and pure, but just the way that I guess it comes off, and just maybe how cynical my brain is. I'm like, yeah, he's trying to smash. I get it. It's just like but then there were parts of it that I was like, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this right now, and I'm
The
a
wee
creep.
little snow gypsy girl is too small for me. She makes me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, that
And
makes me
dude,
uncomfortable.
and we'll get to that, because the way they explained it, I was just like,
It's
whoa, what?
It's so wrong.
There's a lot to talk about in this one, so we're gonna dig into this one here. But
But-
before we get into it, I think Sean's got a little bit of a history background.
Thank you. So, Jack Frost is a stop-motion animated television special that premiered on NBC on December 13th, 1979. It was directed by Jules Bass and Arthur Rankin Jr. and written by Romeo Muller. It airs annually on ABC Family's cable network as a part of its 25 Days of Christmas programming block. And I guess Dave mentioned a fun fact that
Mhm.
ABC Family is now going to be changing their name starting in January to Freeform.
Yeah,
Just Freeform, because
just freeform with a hashtag sometimes.
nothing is more bizarre or Dadaist than just calling your television network Freeform. What's going to be on
So-
this? It just shrugs. We don't know. Free
it's
fucking
just
form.
the shrug emoji.
Just a shrug emoji. Oh, I love it. I will tune in. That sounds interesting.
So for the last 10 years, listeners, you've probably been saying like, oh man, I'd love to watch just a Harry Potter marathon for no apparent reason on a weekend. Oh, let's put ABC Family on because it's probably on there. Now you have to turn into Freeform. So yeah, get used to that. But back to Jack Frost. Here is the synopsis for this one. Like last week, it was basically just the origin story of Rudolph, right? This one is slightly, I don't want to say more advanced, but it's got something a little bit more to do with it than just the origin story of that name. So this story, oddly enough, and we'll talk about this in a second, is narrated by the Groundhog named Pardon Me Pete. Pardon me.
We have
Pete.
to get into the idea of a frame story here, which
That's
goes
right.
back to
Oh,
the
yeah.
Canterbury
That's right.
Tales, and
Yes. Based on the Canterbury Tales. Yeah. This is a Chaucer-esque holiday story. To be fair, it is slightly more advanced than Rudolph, where they just have Burl Ives as a sweater vest wearing snowman roll out of the trees and just say, "Hey kids, I'm going to tell you a story."
Don't be
It's slightly
different,
more involved.
or people will
Yeah.
laugh at you.
Or a woman, or possibly a gay dentist.
if you're going to be different, though, at least be useful. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
And never apologize when you're wrong. All right. So thanks, Burl Ives. So narrated by the Groundhog, Pardon Me Pete, the special tells the tale of Jack Frost, the winter sprite, and his adventures as a human. So not much more complicated than Rudolph, but for people who aren't really familiar with Jack Frost, it's not really an origin story. It's just one of his tales that he happened to get into with hijinks at becoming a human. So a little bit of a Little Mermaid thing kind of going on there. There's actually a lot
We'll
of
get back to
interesting, yeah, a lot of interesting kind of fairy tale crossovers, and people might get kind of a Disney's Frozen kind of storyline in here at some point. Now, granted, this was 1979, so there's just a lot of little bits and pieces at work here. But I think on the whole, it worked really well. We'll definitely tear apart some of the stuff that is definitely outdated at this point, 45 years later. But or 35 years later. But yeah, that's pretty good. Do you guys want to start by talking about Pardon Me Pete and his little introduction there?
Let's get into it.
Yeah. Joe, you have him in the studio, so if you want to just kind of ask him, like, what's the deal? How did he get involved with this? What were his thoughts during the filming process? Does he keep in touch with Jack?
Are they still running the same scam that they've seemingly
That's
been
right.
running for years and years and years?
Indeed,
Is
they
he
are.
related to Punxsutawney Phil?
Indeed, that's the question. So
That is the
Pardon Me Pete
question.
is the prognosticating groundhog, and he's got Jack Frost's shadow on loan, which
That's right.
he uses as part of a scam to get 6 more weeks of sleep every spring by hanging on for a little bit more winter. And he narrates and takes us back into the story and relates how that deal first originated, and introduces the character of Jack Frost, and is voiced by Buddy Hackett.
Yeah.
How about that?
Now, we
Who-
did mention who you also...
Yeah, you
you
had-
mentioned
Well,
the great point earlier about Buddy Hackett and some of the other work that he's done.
Right. The voice, once you hear it, it's unmistakable as Scuttle, who is the seagull in The Little Mermaid, who tries to tell Ariel about different human implements.
Yeah, the Dinglehopper.
The
I can't remember the
Dinglehopper
rest of them.
and
That's just
the
the one that came up
banded
first.
bulbous snarflap.
Yeah, obviously.
Oh.
He's a well-informed seagull. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Hackett just plays kind of these weird, quirky little characters. I just love the idea of Pardon Me Pete. After you get used to this, because you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm watching a Jack Frost tale, and from what little I know about Jack Frost, he's kind of like this. He brings winter. Sometimes he's kind of a bad guy. Sometimes he's kind of a rapscallion. I did not expect this movie to open with an origin story of Groundhog's Day.
Well, and it
So
spends an
I don't
awful lot of
100% know
time
what happened
interacting
with
with the groundhog.
Yeah, there's very little. It's very little time spent on Jack's end, but we spend a whole shitload of time with this groundhog in his bed.
I think he gets like 50% of the musical numbers, and they're universally
lot.
awful.
I love the...
Now that's the one song I remember though. Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, no. I love the idea of this groundhog has fooled everybody into another month and a half of snow so that Jack Frost can continue to creep on women. And he's in just...
And so that the groundhog can just go back to sleep.
Right, so that he can go back
That's
to
all
sleep.
he wants.
But no, I mean...
Very industrious
but
at
it leads,
being
It leads
lazy,
me to the
yeah.
point that, like, what a lazy little shit to be able to set up this scam. And then as he's getting ready to go back asleep, like, as he's getting ready to rest his little groundhog head down on that delightful, comfy pillow, he just looks at you and he's like, hey, I'm going to tell you how I screwed everybody over for the next 6 weeks. And you're like, what?
He's a little shyster.
All right. Thanks.
He's like, well, since you're here, I might as well fill you in on this story.
Yeah. As if you are a guest that he has invited, and he feels he's a very polite groundhog in the sense that he continues to say, pardon me, for seemingly no reason whatsoever.
No,
Yeah,
it's
his
just
name.
terrible.
Yeah. I love Joe's eye roll as I say, I'm just like, seemingly for no reason. Joe just goes, oh, God, this little shit.
That's the pardon me stuff is just terrible.
Yeah.
Some of
I
this
don't know if
has
they came
aged
up with it
pretty well,
because-
and some of it has aged very poorly.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where I don't know if they did it as they were trying to come up with like a marketing gimmick, but also had like copyright things. Because I think Punxsutawney Phil might actually be a copyrighted name. Because there's another one in, I think, West Virginia. I could be wrong. It might be Ohio. Has a different name. Actually, I think there's one in Atlanta named like General Beauregard or something like that.
My God.
So there's all these freaking groundhogs all over the place that everybody's like laid claim to and named, and they haul them out on the 2nd of February every year. So I guess Pardon Me Pete had to be his own thing. It just never really took off. You're not putting a statue of Pardon Me Pete on
I
your
don't
roof
have
every
a bunch
Groundhog
of action
Day.
figures in
Oh,
box.
I do see that. You got a shelf
know.
full of them from over the
Yeah.
Those
years.
are nice.
That's impressive,
Thank
actually.
you.
One of them's moving. That might actually be Pete.
That might
So you
actually be
wanna-
Pete.
Yeah, it might be Pete trying to blend in. So the first song that we get, so this thing kind of opens up with like almost like a Groundhog's Day, the movie version, where it's like you see these like these newscaster like posters, or you see these stills for like a news show.
And
Yeah,
I
John,
want to say
you-
I loved the artwork that they did for it. I sincerely
okay,
the
like magazine
the
covers,
magazine-
like TV guide
yeah,
covers.
those were so beautiful. I really did enjoy the artwork in those stills and sort of how
Yeah.
they use that to at least set the tone that this is a tradition, and this groundhog is better than all those other dumb groundhogs. So go to a Hallmark store and buy a card or a stuffed animal to support Pardon Me Pete. And then
That's right.
They just kind of jump into the story of him. I want to say playing coy.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, his whole thing starts off with, like you said, the newscasters and stuff, and then he kind of goes into his song. And like I said at the intro, this is the only one I really remember. It's called "Me and My Shadow," and it's just kind
it
of like
stretches the very limits of what a song is defined as.
Yeah, and they do that a lot in this one. They basically get a handful of words that they put to a tune, and then
more
just
or less
repeat 'em.
rhyme.
And
More or less.
And the one thing I noticed is that a majority of the choruses are the same word said, the same phrase said over and over and over. So it could be.
That's so many times.
It could be me and my shadow, and it's just a groundhog just saying, me and my shadow, me and my shadow.
I'm a map, I'm a map,
Yeah.
I'm a map.
Just over and over and over again. And it's.
They really push it right to that limit. Some of them go over. The one with the dream presence, that one almost made me a little crazy.
Yeah.
That's the only one I remembered. Like,
oh man,
stuck in my head for all these
They say
years.
the same lines, and 12 people sing it, and it takes 2 minutes for each one of them to do it. That's half the damn movie. So that one, I can remember. We'll get there in a second. So
you can
we've
just
got Me and My
imagine
Shadow.
Rankin and Bass being like, "Stretch it out, guys, stretch it out. Come on,
We got
come
a lot
on.
more commercials.
You
to
can
fill
get
in
4 minutes out of this song. baby.
Also,
Come on."
do me a
That's
favor.
right.
The most depressing idea that we're gonna put into this,
Mhm.
just in terms of poverty, let's just stretch that out as far. Let's just stretch.
Oh my
let's really
God.
give this poverty song as much legs as we can to really emphasize just the impact of nothing on these people's lives. And
Dude, and not just the song, just every facet of their life is just like, well, how can we make them seem even poorer? We'll get to poverty of the pumpkin peasants here in a second.
God.
So
In the
this song, Me and My
HBO
Shadow-
version of this
Yes, After
special,
Dark.
there would
Yeah.
totally be explicit cannibalism. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, you think that's what it is?
Oh yeah.
Explicit cannibalism. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
the
So-
tag. Explicit.
So Joe, let me see if I'm following you on this. In the moment where they're cutting what looks like an acorn or a summer squash,
No, that was not a summer
it's
squash.
just
but yes,
in the
I'm with
original
ya.
version. It's or maybe
Yeah.
maybe it's a
It's
pumpkin.
just a corpse.
It's just it's
It's a corpse.
It's just somebody's like leg muscle.
The crushing
It's a
poverty.
family member.
Yeah.
Yeah. They fell during the last winter and were planted, and now they're being harvested.
That's a long time to save a dead body.
Well, things work different in January Junction. Fresh meat, it stays fresh longer due to cold temperatures provided by Jack
I was
Frost,
gonna say,
which we haven't even gotten to yet, by the way.
As well,
I
that
just
fits
wanted
it
to
right
point
in
out
with
real
the
quick
story
that-
because they end up talking to, Pardon Me Pete forever, and they just keep coming back to him. Every commercial break, they just go back to him.
Yes, he frames every single thing going to an intro and an outro from commercials. So his one main thing is this Me and My Shadow, which is like this musical kind of montage of him getting dressed and getting ready to go outside. And whether or not he sees his shadow will determine, I mean, you guys know how Groundhog Day works. So we've got this conceit that he is in cahoots with somebody who has this magical shadow. So he's always going to like see the shadow, whether or not there's sunlight in the sky or not. And he's always going to run back in. So that's that. We still haven't even gotten to Jack Frost, but now is pretty much where we get to him.
So do you remember Jack Frost's how he's introduced?
Is it during the second scene where he's just kind of like a ghost? Pete explains that he has a shadow, but it's not his shadow. It's his buddy Jack Frost.
Right.
He says, you've never seen Jack Frost because he's invisible. Oh, except for that one time when he was a human.
Yeah, right.
And I worked out a deal and I got his shadow. I'll tell you that story in a second. It's just like, wait, what?
So there's that moment where
so
the
he's got-
newscaster is
Yeah.
paying 25 cents for, I think it was chestnuts from
Yeah, I think
a
so.
cart vendor, and what looks like a weird ghost like holds his nose
Yeah.
for like 2 seconds, and
Good animation, because I don't really know how they did that
I
with
have
the style of animation.
no idea how they did that. So
They must. I'm wondering if it's just like a hand-drawn thing over the cell shaded, like the stop motion stuff.
that could be, yeah.
Because it's just kind of like this transparent figure of a boy who's kind of, you can tell he's kind of dressed in like blue and white, almost like a jester's getup.
Yeah.
With like really bright blue eyes.
But everybody's familiar with
they pushed the very limits of animagic on this one.
Yeah,
really did.
But everybody's familiar with
Animagic
that moment of from the song Jack Frost nipping at your nose, and so they show it, and I didn't know what it was because you've been introduced to this groundhog telling you how he scams everybody, and then suddenly there's this weird ghost Zephyr that's like pinching somebody's nose, and that's your introduction to Jack Frost.
And then the weirdest part was that Michael Keaton shows up and turns into a snowman. And I didn't really get
I'm the snowman!
but that was a real left turn. I've got more Jack Frost references coming later.
There's so many.
Hold on.
Can't wait.
There's so many.
There's so many movies that are called Jack Frost. This is
unfortunately, and they're all different genres, which is really confusing to kids.
I don't think any of them are good.
And this one's probably the best.
This one's probably
to be honest with you.
crop.
Yeah. So then we've got at this Jack Frost introduction, we've got our second song, and this is kind of like the Jack Frost theme. I don't know if I had a name or not, but it was basically just Jack Frost's theme, and it shows him living amongst these villagers, these kids, these humans, and just kind of interacting with them during the winter. So during the winter, he brings about snowstorm, he brings about ice and snow and cold temperatures, and he makes winter last as long as possible until spring thaws him out, and then he disappears. But he never really gets to live alongside the humans. He kind of interacts with them, and he jokes with them, and just like plays little tricks and stuff, but he doesn't actually get to be a part of their community.
It is so creepy too.
I don't think it's that creepy. It can be creepy.
He is standing there waving at children as they're riding toboggans through his ghost body, just wide-eyed, giant smile, hand waving as if they can see him, and then they ride through him, and he turns around, and he's still looks like he's cackling like maniacally, like these little kids. Oh, I love them so much. They can't see. I just wanted the Forever Alone meme to pop up on top of him, and I was like, ooh, creepy.
And as we get more and more into the story, that becomes more and more appropriate, I think, sadly. But yeah, it could be creepy if you have kind of that mindset. I, again, just took it as like, he's a sprite, so he's kind of like a fairy creature. So he's just he's just pure magic, and he has one particular job to do, and he does really well at it. And then we soon find out that there's a lot of other sprites that they have their own jobs to do, and they all kind of work together in this sort of machinery to help keep winter going the way it's supposed to. But Jack throws a wrench into that because he doesn't want to do that anymore necessarily.
No, I was going to say, going to throw this out to you and Joe, of these additional fairies and sprites, I thought that was relatively fascinating. Did you guys have a favorite?
I'll throw it to Joe.
I'm going to go with Snip, who handcrafts each and every snowflake.
What a job, man.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? Sitting there day in, day out, just cutting up ice crystals into snowflakes. Right. I don't know who has the worst job. I mean, he loves it. He enjoys it. That's fine. But so Snip sits there. Do you want to get into these now, or do you want to go back to January Junction quick, like the story?
Oh yeah, we can get back into January Junction because we have some big we have some big things to get into.
Yeah. This. Yeah, definitely. So so we've got Snip, and like Joe mentioned, he makes all the snowflakes. So every single snowflake that falls across the world during wintertime, he makes it, and they're all unique. No two are the same because Snip hand makes them out of these little pair of scissors, which apparently he's got drawers full of. So a little pair of scissors that say Snip on it. So you would think, okay, he makes the snowflake. So then what happens? And that's where my favorites come in. The snow gypsies, which you don't really find out much about them other than there's a shitload of them. And their job is to just kind of like stand there and like...
they're a bucket brigade.
They're a bucket brigade of snowflakes. One at a frickin' time, though. They take one snowflake, pass it down the line, and then they have a very important job, ladies and gentlemen. They have to flip the snowflake so that when it lands on Earth, it lands exactly where Father Winter decreed that it should land.
It's got to be
so they have to flip Snip's snowflakes. Yeah.
That job would drive me bananas. That would be my nightmare.
Well, where do you find yourself in the line of gypsy snowflake flippers? Are you the last guy, the first guy, the middle guy?
I mean, you almost have to be... I mean, if this is the bucket brigade, you want to be the last guy in line because how do you even know? Because if you want to be the final guy to throw yours because everybody else could have screwed up to that point in time. And if you're the last one, you're just like, I flipped it and it made it. We're good. Like, we're all right.
We're good. I really hope they have like a snow gypsy union though, that they like rotate through the line every shift, so it's not the same people in the same. Because they might get
Cross
like
training and
something,
Right.
or at least switch
CrossFit.
sides, different side of the line, do some CrossFit in the Wintry Kingdom. So I like the snow gypsies. They don't really go into them too much, except for one in particular. But Sean, did you have a favorite from these sprites?
It was actually probably the main sprite. I really liked Father Winter. I thought
Oh,
that
you
was a
did? Okay.
great concept of just this.
Did you like his design?
Yeah, that's
though?
actually
His
that's
design
what
I thought was a little
loved.
lacking, but okay.
It was the fact that he just has this enormous white beard that billows almost and leads into this cloud that he's sitting on top of. He has a giant megaphone, and he just breathes cold breath down on everybody. Like, he's screaming. I can relate to that. I can relate screaming at people from high above. And so I think I bonded with him. He sounded like a cool
Okay.
guy. Plus, I think, as we're going to talk about, he has the
Mhm.
ability to be able to grant some wishes. And so it's nice.
He lacks the ability to say no to
Right.
his son,
Well,
creation, whatever, Jack
He,
Frost.
he presents
Three times
Creation.
he could have
I'm going with
denied him. It's
creation.
just like,
presents a pretty
think creation,
compelling
not son, yeah.
case, an argument. So
we'll get back to
I
that.
think I can go
When
with
we
it.
get into Jack Frost as Christ figure, let's get
Yes,
back
thank
to
you.
that.
That's definitely in my notes.
Father Winter,
Mhm.
Jack Frost. Is he a son? Is he a creation? We'll
wants
talk
to
more
become
about that.
flesh and live amongst the
Yeah.
humans, and perhaps, to put it in Sean's florid. I don't think that's right. Florid language. To
Yep.
smash. Yes, to smash. So you like Father Winter. Okay, so that's good. We've covered kind of most of the bases. We got Snip, the snowflake maker. We've got the snow gypsies who flip the snowflakes down to earth, and we've got Father Winter who kind of oversees this whole thing from his cushy cloud.
And
One
there's some
we did
others
not
that are a
talk
little
about.
rushed.
Yeah, we can talk about it. We can talk about Holly for
Why
whatever
would
reason
we?
she's there for. Well, why is she there?
Right, totally skippable. They could have made this whole story a lot tighter and just left her out.
I don't know what. She's like the princess
Well,
of the Gypsies.
well, they make
apparently?
that comment about
Or-
how any snowflake that is pure white, she holds onto
Yes.
it and ensures that it's cold.
It's for Christmas,
Isn't it?
and they totally could have
It's
left that
Christmas
out. There's a
now.
bunch of they could have tightened it up. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. I
I
agree.
don't know. They stretch these fucking songs to exhaustion, but they never touch on the Christmas snow or what Holly's freaking job is.
But
supposed to be.
Holly is she is
She is minuscule.
Yes, thank you.
Let's put it
But
that
they don't really give you her scale until they introduce her, but they don't really give you her
Right.
scale. And so you're like, oh, she's kind of a cute little pixie elf. And then you realize that she's like the size of a
she's
pencil.
just
And
like a
you're
doll.
like, what the
She's
fuck?
a doll. She's a child's
Yeah.
doll, basically. A living child's doll. Now that
That's
I find
very
creepy. I don't really find invisible Jack Frost waving at kids in toboggans as creepy. But child doll is super creepy. There's some creepy stuff going on. But yeah, like Joe said, so Snip will occasionally make a very special snowflake. And I don't really know what determines that, but I guess Snip does. And then he calls Holly over. She kind of skates over, takes that to whatever her special Christmas snow hideaway is, and keeps it cold until Christmas.
And
But they
that
never come back to
important
that.
piece of exposition never factors into the story at all and is never
Nope.
brought up again.
Never brought up again. So they just kind of forgot about that. So she's got an outhouse full of Christmas snow up there that's just rotting away. Do we have any other sprites?
There was
yeah,
yeah,
outhouse.
the
That's the word I
outhouse.
was
We have
looking
the
for, Sean.
Sleet Sisters.
Oh, the Sleet Sisters.
And we have somebody who I believe his name was just Hale.
No, it's the Hale
Fellows. Thank you.
Yeah, so like the sisters, they're responsible for sleet, which is terrible. And then we've got the Hale Fellows who kind of like, they either let hail go during the winter or they hold it up, they store it up until summertime. So then they can release it during like thunderstorms and stuff. So those guys are jerks. But yeah, they don't really go back to them either. They were just kind of like, hey, we got this wintry theme going on here. Let's just make up some more sprites. I thought that was fun though. I thought this whole thing, the whole way of like how winter works in the Wintry Kingdom, I thought it was fun.
I thought it was too.
cool. And with the exception of the Christmas snow stuff that they didn't come back to, I thought it was well, just kind of thought out and very fun and
I think they call it world building. You get the
exactly.
impression
Yeah, and they
walking
did a good
into
job.
a
They
fully
just did
formed
not.
Japanimation.
Yeah.
So
they just didn't follow up on
yeah.
it.
Well, we have this world building that is for these sprites and these pixies, and then we have the
Right.
world building that's down on Earth, and we have
Exactly.
a couple key characters that are down there.
Boy, do we.
And for some reason, we can't have a Rankin Bass show without having a mama and a papa character. So
Who are literally, I just think, named Mama
they
and
are.
Papa.
They're just named Mama and
Yes.
Papa
Yeah,
again.
okay, I just want to make sure. And they're the pumpkin
They're
peasants.
the pumpkin peasants, and they are.
So these people are already looked down upon because they're introduced as in the town called January Junction. We have the pumpkin.
So
peasants.
did the pumpkin peasants and just the level of poverty, was this immediately following the Dust Bowl? Is that the period of time?
It must have been, but
Pretty much.
whatever the like Eastern European version was of that, because they are instantly introduced as having like vaguely Russian accent.
Right.
Yeah,
But
there's
only-
this whole Slavic thing going on.
Yes, very much.
But
so,
really
yeah.
only Mama and Papa, and this other
Yeah.
character that I'll introduce, who is Kubla Kraus.
He might be my favorite of the whole thing because there is a whole bag of crazy
Oh,
going
man.
on in there.
Uh,
This guy, first of all, his name's Kubla Kraus. Can we talk
let's
about
get in.
that? I don't know what to do with that name. Kubla Kraus. It sounds like it should be way more offensive than it is. It just seems like kind of a slur.
Well, there's the rub.
but at the
'cause
same time,
there's
there's the rub bub.
Gosh.
Yet another song. That's one of Kubla Kraus's songs that he gets to later, where you find out a bit more about him. We won't get to that just yet, but he's listing all these things. Like he's like, oh, I could have been a sultan. I could have been a raja. I could
Samurai.
Have been what's the what's
Shogun.
the leader? Emperor or
Yeah.
shogun. I could have been all these things, but there weren't. There's none of those people that are around here, so I can't lead them, and that's the rub. And he says it about
Oh
50
boy.
times. Yeah. So Kubla Kraus, guys, the way that this guy was introduced, I mean, well, first of all, okay, so we got to go back to the peasants who kind of introduced Kubla Kraus in
Right.
name first. So they're harvesting their last of whatever their pumpkin/corpse crop is before winter comes in and wipes everything out, right?
Winter is
So
coming.
it's winter is coming, exactly, before winter descends. So they're harvesting everything, and then Papa kind of has like this furtive look where he's got like this little metal coin, and Mama's like, Papa, what's that? What does he call
Oh,
it?
it's a kaputnik.
It's a kaputnik.
Yep.
A kaputnik, which apparently now is where we're going to start to get into the economics of January Junction and the pumpkin peasants. A kaputnik is 1/100th of 1 penny. All right? So a kaputnik is worth basically nothing. But depending on this economy, I mean, Papa wanted to hold on to it for a while because Kubla Kraus had basically come in. He'd taken everything from these people. He took all their gold, their riches, their horses, tried to take their women folk, all kinds of stuff. And that's kind of how you're introduced, because then all of a sudden you see Mama try to be like, why do you have this kaputnik? Kubla's going to take it from you. And then who comes charging in on an iron metal horse? Kubla Kraus, who is introduced as the hero of the Cossacks.
Yeah, that there was so much
So-
history in here that again they hint at it for 2 seconds, but then they never expand that world to really anything. They're
Just like kids know who
just
Cossacks
little
are, right?
subs of information, and then they're never fleshed out.
No, I mean, the closest we get to that is that you find out that he's the hero of the Cossacks. He's the scourge of the town. He's the king of the Cossacks, but there are no Cossacks left. So it's pretty much just him in a castle by himself on the top of a mountain. And that's all the story/backstory that you get. Basically, the Cossacks were so tired of him, and he was such a terrible leader or ruler that they just left. They just up and left. So that's that. Do you guys remember his horse's name?
Oh no, I forgot.
I have it listed as Clang
Yeah.
Stomper.
Yeah, I was gonna go with Romper Stomper, but okay.
pretty-
Clang
pretty
Stomper, and then he
Clang
also has a
Stomper.
robot.
Oh,
He
he's
has
got
a-
a lot
he
of
has-
stuff going on up in
Well,
that.
he's got
in
one
that
main
castle.
robot that acts as a butler. Did you get the name for that?
I have them later on once we go back
Right.
up to his. I've got it's either Fang Stomper or Clang Stomper, and then Fetch
Fetch
Kvetch.
Kletch is the
Oh,
Kletch.
Kletch. And then he's got an army of Knights.
Yeah, the Knights.
I
Yeah,
roll
the
for
Knights.
days.
He's also got artificial
Yeah.
mice.
Yeah.
But he's
And then what's his last?
he's got
Yeah, go ahead.
one special friend that we should note.
Yeah.
Anybody have any specific opinions about Dami?
Well,
Dami.
this is one thing I can bring up is that on all previous viewings, it never got into my 6-year-old mind that he's a dummy and that Kubla Kraus is just talking to himself. that totally went over my head at 6 years old.
The fairly important plot point as
It
we're watching
actually
it this
is,
time around.
yeah.
But yeah.
So Dami is just like a little puppet, and Kubla Kraus talks for him. But yeah,
It's
that
not
totally
super
got by
clear
me.
at first. But yeah, when they do go back and kind of show them, they show a 2-shot. So it's Dami's talking, but Kubla Kraus's mouth is actually moving at the
That's
same
right.
time. So if you watch it close enough, you can kind of tell.
Yeah, I think discerning 7-year-olds can see that, but being only
Yeah, but not
6,
so
it was
much
way
the
beyond
6.
me.
No, it's too advanced. Too advanced. So that's kind of our introduction to Kubla. He rides in on the Clang Stomper, this metal iron horse, this robotic horse. Now this guy's got to be fairly he's either stolen a lot of machines or he's fairly industrious and has an engineering knowledge and has
I
built
think
all
they
these
say he
things.
builds them
And-
all.
You think he builds them all?
He builds them all.
And that's what
Okay.
that as a part of Kubla Kraus, I thought to myself, this man's a genius.
Right?
Yeah.
What?
Just insane. He's just
Right.
crazy.
The economy of January Junction makes no sense whatsoever because
Right.
he could be applying this mechanical knowledge to benefit everyone, but instead
That's
he
right.
just runs around stealing all the money. It makes no sense at all.
Well, he's insane. So he's stealing all their money to do nothing with it, and then he's just making machines out of rusty old
And then
pots,
sitting up
basically.
in a castle on Miserable Mountain completely by
Miserable
himself
mountain.
doing
Location,
right?
location.
And he's doing
That's right.
nothing. He's sitting alone in a throne room, sort of like
He's making
sort of like
robot mice.
last week's on last week's episode was a Moonracer.
That's right.
The
Moonracer, the king
Misfit
of
Island Misfit
the
Toys.
Island
Yeah,
Misfit
and so
Toys.
he's just sitting there by himself, holding court for nothing.
And occasionally riding his metal horse down into town to steal any kaputniks.
He must have one of those was it those old the device that people like in the early 19th century would like hold up to their ears in order to hear better.
Oh, the
yeah, like
the phones, the big
earphone
earphone thing.
thing that they at any time somebody says kaputnik, he's just like, well, fire up the iron horse. We gotta get down
Fire
there.
up Clang Stomper.
I got thieving to do.
It's pretty great. But as quick as he shows up, he's
Right.
gone again. And this is when we're introduced to... So the peasants now, they take his little kaputnik, and the peasants are like, well, we're all out of money, at least until winter gets here. And I was like, well, wait,
Yeah,
what,
it made
what
no
does that
sense.
mean? And here's where I'd like to turn it back over to Joe to talk about the economies of scale here in January Junction.
All right, so once winter gets here,
He's rolling up his sleeves, by the way.
the icicles form, and the folks of January Junction print money. They just, instead of depending on solid, valuable metal-based currency, they just go around sawing up icicles into ice money, and they use it as if it's real money.
What did they call them? What did the narrator call them? The ice money?
He
He
called
said they, once winter came, they had
Ice
a lot
coins.
of... Well, yeah. He said you could also call them frozen assets.
Ah, God, that's right.
Financial humor for the kids.
Which
And love
Which
those
makes no
frozen
sense
and liquid
because if you have
assets.
frozen assets, that means it's an asset that you can't get a hold of because it's been seized by the government or another foreign body.
But it's funny because
Right.
they're like, well, ice money kind of explains it, but
I love the
it's
fact that you're
frozen
just like, look,
assets.
I know it's a bad concept, it's awful, but Sean, you're missing the obvious point. Ice.
you're missing
Ice.
ice. You're missing temperature-related humor, Sean. That's gold.
This is almost as good as what was it, Batman Forever,
Oh, what did they have?
with Arnold Schwarzenegger as Iceman.
Ice to
Oh, it was
meet
Iceman.
you.
Iceman. Nice to meet you.
What? Chill
Everybody
out.
chill. Oh, God, don't get me started on that. There's like 64 ice puns.
Frozen assets. They should have worked that in.
They didn't. I don't think they used that one. I don't know if they did or not.
Schwarzenegger was probably
Schumacher.
on set. He's like, guys, I can't do any more ice puns.
That's the last
Contractually.
straw. The frozen assets joke was the last one that broke him.
Okay.
So now we're in January Junction. Jack Frost has shown up. He's done his job. He's still invisible. He's still a sprite now. He's still Jack Frost.
Yep.
He's done his job. The peasants have ice money. Everything's great. Except Jack Frost is feeling a little randy. I don't know what you want to call this here. I thought it was really sweet.
He
thought it was
falls
just a
in
story of
virtuous love with.
I agree with Joe. I felt that he had admired somebody from afar, had heard kind of through the grapevine, i.e. being invisible and standing right next to them when they said it,
Creepin'.
that she Yeah, that she was also in love with him, even though nobody really believes that Jack Frost is like a real living being. He's just the spirit that they kind of attribute the arrival of winter toward. So she's like, I love Jack Frost. I love when winter shows up and everything freezes over and we have all this, we're flush with ice money and we just got all this great stuff going on. I love Jack Frost. And he overhears this, which leads him to then ask his creator, Father Winter / God, whatever you want to call it, if he can be human for just a little bit. And that leads into all kinds of craziness that opens up pretty much the rest of the show.
I want to talk about when oh god, this is so no,
Elisa?
it's not Elisa. Elisa seemed as if she was a romantic but also very naive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. She seemed like just a young village girl.
So
she's the
like
ingenue.
Stereotypical.
Yes.
The ingenue. In like very stereotypical like fairy tale story. So not super damsel in distress, at least not right off the bat.
So, she wants to go out into a field and her parents ask her why, and the reason is because she wants to go out there and she wants to see it she wants to see Jack Frost's work as it's happening before it's been ruined by other people trudging through the snow, going to and fro. And so she really just wants to be present, which is admirable, and enjoy things that are happening in the moment. And I can respect that. That's wonderful. But it seems very naive in the sense that she is saying these things, and some of the things that she will talk about that I know that we'll get into in a bit, just about romance and love, and I'm waiting for my knight in shining armor, and just how
literally she says
how she has
knight,
maybe been unable to process the full adult feeling and understanding of love and sex and all of these things that are associated, and she's just like, I'm gonna tell. She's the person that you meet that just says that she loves everything, regardless of what the circumstances are. You could be in a bathroom line and she's like, I love waiting. Waiting's great.
That's my favorite thing.
That's the kind of person that I will see and just walk away from with not even responding. I'll be like, I can't deal with you right now. So,
but yeah, she's just kind of this sweet, innocent village girl. And she's straight out of the gates. She's just like, I love Jack Frost, but it kind of in like a joking way because she just loves the arrival of winter. But then she says, like Sean mentioned, when her parents ask her what she really wants, she's just like, I just want my knight in golden armor, not shining, has to be golden armor to come and basically sweep me off my feet and get married. That's what she wants, and you know that from day one.
But think of these starving peasants. That's just totally unrealistic.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I would just ask for like a handful of kaputniks.
Right.
But,
or maybe just a penny, just like one penny.
Just whoa. Let's not get crazy there. That's 100 kaputniks.
That's a lot
so
of kaputniks.
I guess I say all of this about Elisa to then, like, all of this kind of personality traits about her and her desire and her naivete to kind of build into the idea that Jack Frost, as you said, he had this very kind of pure love and affection for her, which I want to say I sort of misconstrued as lust, because this is somebody he's never talked to. He's only ever watched her from afar. He has no real relationship to build love and affection on other than him creeping. And then, to make matters worse, the deal that he is given from Father Winter is the most insane, unobtainable deal. Go ahead, Dave. Because
I want to pause you there, and I want to hold that energy, because there's one more thing that happens between Jack and Elisa that we should mention before this deal happens. The deal is insane, so I definitely want to come back to that, but just real briefly. So as Elisa is going out to kind of like look upon Jack Frost's miracle of winter, whatever you want to call it, she's just frolicking out by herself with like all the woodland creatures and whatever. By the way, she's a green-eyed blonde, if that helps get this visual in your mind. So she's out wandering around, and at the same time, Kubla Kraus is riding his war horse basically back to Miserable Mountain. He decides to take a path across a supposedly frozen river, and when he does, the weight of the horse basically breaks up all the ice on the river, but apparently only downstream, because he's fine. You never see him again. He gets across the river, he's fine. Unfortunately, Elisa happens to be on that same river, and an ice floe breaks away, and she ends up getting swept downriver. So at this point, Jack Frost is still a sprite, and he actually comes in and saves her. And she has this sense that the sprite did something to save her, that something magical happened, that somebody was looking out for her. So she's aware that there's this presence. She just kind of like thanks it, and then just goes on about her merry way. So at this point, I think this might be when she says something like, I love Jack Frost.
Yeah.
Or, thank you, Jack Frost. I love you so much. Whatever. Yeah. And he hears it. And she doesn't know he's there, but he hears it. So this is when
and
he
blows
takes
it way
his-
out of proportion.
Way out of
because he's so
proportion.
deep in the friend zone, he doesn't even
Yep.
realize it. He's been
And he
loving her
tries to
from
jump that
afar,
ladder.
and
No.
yeah,
No. And this is what happens, man. This is actually why I kind of like this story, because it is very much like, as innocent as Alyssa is, Jack is equally as innocent and naive on the other side. Because he's
Yes.
never been a human before. He's only observed them. He wants to know what it's like to be one of them, possibly to smash, but also just kind of fall in love with Alyssa as a human boy. All right. So this is where he takes his, this is where he takes the deal up to Father Winter. And I want to get back to Sean because he's very excited about this.
I love it every time you say smash, Dave. Your grin just goes up all the way from cheek to cheek. Like you're just like, this is dirty.
the
This is
Grinch.
dirty.
Is the dirty word. I just try to say it as
I love it.
professionally as possible.
So he gets up there and appeals to Father Winter and says, you know, I want to be a human. I want to, like, please allow me to do this. And so, you know, through all of the appeal process, Father Winter says, I'm going to need about 1,000 years. And so he makes this final argument, which
I'm just so glad he didn't say, like, I'm going to give you 1,000 years to cool off or let cooler heads prevail. There weren't a lot of ice puns
Thankfully.
in this, so I'm happy there were only a handful.
So he gets to this point, and Father Winter says, you know what? I'm going to allow you to do it for one season. He's like, but at the end of
Right.
this season, you have to have procured a house, a horse, a bag of gold, and then
Yeah.
a wife to make it all worthwhile.
So these are the things that Father Winter decrees as his things you need in a human world to get by. So these are things you need in a human world to survive. A house, good. A horse, sure. A bag of gold, I mean, it doesn't hurt. And a wife. So, I mean, okay.
not,
How do you
not
feel
feeling
about
like
this?
a
You
very
look like
real
you don't
human
feel good
right
about
now.
this.
I'm sort of
Joe,
feeling
what'd
like
you
a
say?
bit of a failure.
Yeah, right?
You would have been a failure? I'd be
I
a
have no
4 times
horses.
Who
failure,
ha-
basically.
Who
I'm a
has all
renter.
of those things?
Nobody got a
No
bag of
one in
gold.
January Junction.
It's the most unobtainable list of criteria to a
You gotta have a rocket ship, a time machine, 1,000
Submarine.
diamonds.
Yeah,
And a harem.
the best part is that he gives him a season, 3 months, like a quarter of a year to get these things that no one in this town fucking has.
But the greatest part of that is, as crazy as it sounds, and it is crazy, they actually address it in the story, which I really like the fact that he sets out these outlandish goals, and eventually you find out that Jack, once he's made human, we'll get to that, he is like, oh, I just need these things, because he's naive. He's like, well, Father said I need these things, and everybody else in town looks at him like, you're crazy. Like, there's only one person in this whole town that has that, and good luck getting it from him, and he doesn't even have all
Right.
that. So, good luck, buddy. You're up that frozen creek. So, yeah, it was funny, but at least they address
I
it.
guess my
And they come
my
back to
main
it twice.
question
Yeah.
is, what luxurious lifestyle is Father Winter living?
Father Winter, he's a fat
What-
man on a cloud, dude. I don't know how else. Like,
what
is more
palatial
comfortable than
cloud manor is he living on where he thinks that these are unattainable? This is the baller status that you need to get to in January Junction.
that? Maybe he said it like that because he didn't want Jack to be
Oh,
human. So maybe he was just
that's-
like, well, here is your.
That's what I wanted to
Here
hear.
is your kind of like, here's your rumspringer. Here's your 3 months to go sow your
Mhm.
wild oats and be crazy and be a human, and then you can get your cold shiny ass
I
back to
think
work.
it would have been great if Father Winter had given him a weird set of criteria. He's like, you need to go to Cancun and go on spring break.
You need to try a Mai Tai. Just
You
like,
need to
what?
go get hot
Yes.
wings at a TGI Fridays.
But not an express. It has to be a real restaurant.
Like if it was the most, you must play a scratcher lotto ticket. Like, and just giving him these like obtainable.
Murder a homeless man.
Oh,
Read
it
a
got
Bret
dark real
Easton
quick.
Ellis book. Like,
You can do both
can.
those at the same time.
it's pretty much a how-to if you read the book.
It's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Like,
Oh boy. So this is time one where Father Winter relents to his creation's wishes. So he's like
Which he does every single time.
every single time.
He's a
Jack
total
asks him like,
pushover.
"Well, can we just a little longer?" I guess. So Father Winter is basically like, "Whatever, dude. Just go. You're my son, my creation. Go be made flesh and live amongst the humans." No one's ever
Mhm.
done that story before.
Right.
So that's that. So you've got Jack, and now he kind of falls to earth and does this sort of transformation to like this little blonde, still sprightly looking guy, but definitely a human. All right, so he quite literally falls to earth and
he
is very
kind of
clumsy
reminded
once
me
he
of like
gets
a
there.
Dick Van
But he's not on his
Dyke-esque
own.
character.
Yeah.
Tripping over ottomans
Yeah.
everywhere he went.
Kind of a pointy
Just
nose kind of
clumsy-
face
Yeah,
thing.
clumsy
kind
as
of
shit.
angular. Clumsy as shit, very angular.
Dancing with penguins.
Yep, as you do in a tuxedo. Chimney sweeping.
So he gets down to town, and he begins.
Yeah.
Right.
But he's not on his own.
He is joined by Snips and Holly, are also made human and sent
Which
down to
I
Earth.
have. They're also made human. I have to say that I love that because they had no desire to do such a thing. Father Winter was just like, you two are gonna go, despite your incredibly important jobs up here, because without Snips and Jack Frost, Winter is shut down. The Snow Gypsies aren't doing anything. Holly's gone. There's no Christmas snow.
Yeah.
What's going on up there? You know what I mean?
And again, though, do they contribute to the story in any meaningful way from there on out? Like,
Snips, he's kind of your comedy relief.
Holly
Holly doesn't do anything. She literally
Holly
just gets
is
carried around.
tucked into Snips's arm like a football.
And Snips is like a tiny little
Yeah.
person to begin with, and then he's carrying her around like a doll.
Now
so
I
she's
want
super
to
tiny.
because we were talking about this in terms of size and proportion for her. Now she is introduced to Mama and Papa.
Right. So at this point, Jack has met Elisa. He introduces himself as Jack, and then catches himself and says, "Jack Snip, I'm a tailor and I need a job." So she brings him home.
So at this point, the actual Snips and Holly arrive at Mama and Papa's, and they're introduced. And this is Snips gives some outlandish name, which is ridiculous.
I've got.
No,
do you have it written down? I think I have it. Hold on. Let me see. Oh,
Leonardo
what I've got,
something.
What I've got is Fernando Leonardo Crizzi
Yep, that was it.
Papadopoulos, and they look at him and he's just like, "That's the
That
first thing
was
that
the
came to
first
my
thing
mind."
that
Like,
came to mind.
what? That's the first thing. Your
Yeah.
name is Snips. We should also mention that, and I want to ask Joe this in a second, but we should mention that Snips gives his magic scissors to Jack before he goes back to Earth to become a human, and then just shows up with them anyway. So, does he actually use those scissors for anything except just tailoring?
Yeah, minor
Haberdashery?
tailoring,
Yeah.
nothing special.
Nothing special. Okay, so magic, unique snowflake cutting scissors, just used to be a
Yeah,
tailor.
just,
Okay.
yeah, totally mundane cape tailoring.
So again, Joe,
Just
to
making
your
sure.
point, thing that could have been very impactful and is really built up
Right.
at the beginning, zero payoff. Well,
Right.
this brings me to a point that creeped me out when Holly
Okay.
when Holly
Point
is
number two.
introduced to Mama and Papa. Did you hear what
Right.
the question that she asked?
It was something to the effect of like, "Why is she so small?" I was more stunned by the response.
Well,
that
did you
they
hear
gave,
what
but-
the question she asked? She goes, "What is she? Is she an almost?"
Oh,
Really?
Yeah, that's
is
what
that
I
what she
heard.
said?
Weird.
Like an
Almost?
almost. I was so uncomfortable.
Oh, I did not hear that. I'll have to go back and listen to it. 'Cause
Yeah.
that
And it was-
could mean a
And it
lot
was
of
very weird
terrible
because I watched
things.
it twice to try to grab it, but it said it's a line of dialogue that said over other dialogue that's happening. So it's two people
Yeah.
like two or three people talking at the same time, and you just hear it go, "Is she an almost?" And I went, "Oh no, what is this?"
Don't know. But the
That's
answer
insane.
that they give her is almost as bad. Because he's basically like, oh, she was a gypsy princess that insulted the king and they cursed her to be really tiny. And they were just like, oh, yeah,
No, you're
totally makes
making
sense.
that up.
Just like, that totally makes sense.
if that's your justification for why she's so small, you could have just said malnutrition. We live in a poor
Yeah,
fucking town.
exactly. Bam. There it
Would've
is.
been-
Right. Have you
they're
seen
like-
these freaking peasants?
We're the pumpkin peasants. We totally get it. But no, they made it some sort of gypsy curse that they were also totally fine with. Like, yeah, you know,
Well, that explains
happened
it.
to my
I want
cousin.
to pause
Yeah.
and
Okay.
say there. It feels like there has been so much that has gone on in this show at this point.
But it's all
And
just establishment.
This show is only what 47, 48 minutes in length, and
Yeah,
we're at
it's
like
nothing.
we're at minute marker 30, and they're
Minute
still like, we're
9.
just
Yeah,
introducing
no.
characters. Like, here's a cavalcade of
Oh, there's more to
everybody.
come.
No, there
Like,
are.
It's
There's more to
insane.
come.
It just feels insane, and we're at the point now, like we're at the precipice where like, things will begin to ramp up, and it's a very quick
Right.
conclusion. But I just want people to know this show is 95% exposition, and then
We
like
haven't even settled on the anthropomorphic
the
duck
family duck.
No, we need to.
yet. Yeah, the
the
family, duck.
Good thing that
Oh,
family
yeah.
duck was out entertaining some friends.
Indeed he was.
Oh my god! And yeah, we still have another character
Well,
who we might as well talk about now because this is about the
So
time he
this
shows
is the
up in
point now
town.
where we have Jack and Snips and Holly are living with Mama and Papa and Lisa, and they're
working as
set up a
tailors.
tailoring business, and so they are doing stuff, and then every day this thing has happened until one day this new thing occurred.
And even before this new thing occurs, there's not much going on between Alyssa and Jack. Like they're kind of occupying the same space, but they're not like going out on dates. They're
She's
not
helping in a
holding
shop
hands.
all the time, but
Yeah,
besides
but you
that.
don't really see anything kind of.
totally
Kindling.
platonic.
Yeah, exactly. Until somebody opens the door one day, and it just happens to be, lo and behold, I have Sir Ravenel.
Ravenel.
Is that right?
Yes, Sir Ravenel.
Sir Ravenel, the Golden Knight,
Uh,
basically. He walks in like the sun shining because he comes in with all kinds. Sean is smitten right now. He comes in and he's just like covered in golden armor with like a red and white flowing cape, and he's just like, "Hello, I am Sir Ravenel, returned from wherever the hell I was for the holidays."
He was helping
Yeah.
King Arthur.
Oh, I didn't get
Yes.
that. I didn't
Yeah,
get that.
yet another throwaway line. There's just
Yeah.
just
Just hanging out with
injecting
King Arthur.
so much in terms of ideas and potential. I want to say this. It's as if nobody, while writing this show, listened to anybody else. They every
Or they were
I
just
know
like,
that this was written by one guy, but I feel like he came in every day
Yeah.
with a new set of agenda, like with new agenda. He's like, oh, yeah.
yeah. He had just read a new history book from a different section of the world on that particular day. He's like, "Oh, I read about these Cossacks and their invasion and then their departure. And then, oh, I read about the British legendary King Arthur this one day. And then, oh, I read about these like Celtic fairy tales about wintry sprites. Let's put it all together."
Could have been
never
something
connect
where
it.
he subscribed to like
So
an
it just-
Encyclopedia Britannica and just every week was getting a
Yes.
new book.
Whatever issue came up. Yeah, exactly. One was just on tailoring and how to like cut and sew your own patterns.
So
into
Sir
snowflake.
Ravenel,
Sir Ravenel. He shows up. He needs his cape tailored.
I was
But
gonna say, why would he
luckily,
show up
the
at a
town
tailor?
has
Yeah.
a tailor as of
That's right.
late.
Now, here's the thing. You would think that, okay, this Golden Knight walks in. He's already hitting on your girl that you have changed yourself from sprite to human just to get close to. And now this guy comes in and he's hitting on your girl and you have to do
Yeah.
work for him. Jack doesn't seem to have any real
I would
reaction to
screw
that.
that
one.
Nothing.
cape up something fierce.
just
Right,
shrink it in the dryer.
so derogatory terms into it.
That's
Yep.
right. In all different languages.
Something offensive for everybody.
I don't think you'd be in the
Nah,
tailor business too long.
d-
Something tells me. But no, Jack doesn't care. We never really see what happens there. Instead, what do we cut to? So like Rabineau is now in town, and it's coming up on Christmas time in town. But remember, this is a town full of peasants,
Right.
right? So what are people going to do for Christmas time?
They do.
How would you solve it?
Actually, if you are unfamiliar, but the townfolk of January Junction are exquisite at giving everybody the perfect gift every single year. You know why?
How
Because
do they
they
manage
give
that?
their friends, their family, an empty box
Mhm.
that is
Sounds
filled
terrible.
with your dreams of.
Oh, so you would
Call
call them
them-
like dream presents and maybe make
Absolutely
a
call
song
them
about
dream
it?
presents, and I would stretch the
Oh.
same song
No.
out for 5 fucking
Yeah,
minutes.
this can't possibly be more than what, 1 minute?
Oh
This is a
God, no!
long
This is a
song.
long song,
Yeah.
long song. Because everybody gets that same empty box. Here's my favorite part: is that they don't even wrap up an empty box per person. They wrap up one fucking empty box, pass it around for everyone to open, and then have a reaction shot of just like, "Oh, this is the best. This is a thing that I need, and I'm so glad that you got it, and it's the best present ever." Now, Joe, this is the song that you said you remember maybe most of all.
Yeah.
Now, is it just because they say the same thing 50 times?
Probably. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Have you ever gotten a dream present?
No.
That's good. I don't think my parents ever tried to pull that one over on me either. So
I want to know how they can afford an empty box.
that's true. That's the same one from year to year. I think they keep it secret and safe
You'd
every
think
year.
that Kubla Kraus would come by and be like, "Give me
Just
that
dank that
box."
Full
he's
of your
taking
dreams.
everything else. Why not?
He has taken everything else.
But he's got no interest in their pumpkins, like the actual food he can
Like
eat. He
food
just
stuff.
walks off, and it's
Yeah.
not at all obvious that he's spending the money he takes to, what's his supply line like?
I
Where's he
think he's
getting
just
all this
melting the
iron
coins
from?
down and turning it into mice.
The economy of this town, something's fishy. I'm telling you.
There's something fishy. So, okay, so at this point, we do get one actual present that's exchanged. All right, and that is from Rabineau to Alyssa.
Yeah, big fancy man comes into town with his
Yeah.
actual presents.
Yeah, with actual presents in a box. I love that she asks if it's a wand first. He's like, "No, dummy, this is a real present. Not some of your made up fucking
I was
dream
hoping
present."
that when she gave him the box, that she didn't open it, and then she
Yeah.
just broke into the like, "You shouldn't have. You didn't. Oh my. Oh
Just started-
my.
just
I
started
really
singing.
didn't deserve it.
Yeah, and
I
he's
think
like,
I'll
"Wait,
cry."
hold on.
Like,
Can you just open it, please? Just
lady,
open
just
it."
open this box.
Crazy. You're the only girl of marrying age in this town, but you're fucking crazy.
I want to say this. To her
Yeah.
point, she's a pretty sexy stop motion animation character.
Yeah, I'll give it to her.
Yep.
Wait, did I say that? Are we recording? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was just kind of.
She's
that was
pretty
just dude
attractive.
talk.
She's pretty attractive. She's quite good looking.
She's got big doughy eyes and
Literally doughy.
large
Like DOUGH.
eyelashes.
Doughy.
Yeah.
Play doughy eyes.
Oh god.
So, okay, we are not the only ones who have fallen in love with Alyssa at this moment, because even though Rabineau gives her a single red rose, which is
You should.
classy thing to do there, guy.
He's just tipping her for fixing that cape.
Oh, that makes sense. Even though I don't
Probably
think she
not.
did anything to it.
No.
Probably not. So someone else happens to set his eyes upon Alyssa at this point, and this is creep ass Kubla Kraus up on Miserable Mountain
With like a telescope.
Yeah, like a creepy telescope and like Dami by his side. So if we're out creeping each other here, I'm gonna say Kubla Kraus is creepier than Jack, because he's just spying on maidens with a telescope
this
from
really
his mountain
is-
on high. Oh, and then kidnapping
Right.
him with
I mean,
his
this
metal
really
horse, by the way.
is a show
Yeah.
of creeps, of male creeps. It's a male creep
It's a
show.
male creep show.
Well, we
Male
have
creep
we
variety
have
hour.
we have the single most uncomfortable line and the most misogynist, sexist line that is said that really took me aback. I don't.
So this one's worse than Is She an Almost?
This one is. This one's absolutely worse
Ugh,
than Is
okay.
She an Almost?
Oh no.
This
All
this
right, what you got?
made this made me angry because in no way, shape, or form did it serve what was going on in the show. It didn't serve the plot.
Mhm.
It felt intentionally misogynist, and I hated it. It's Kubla Kraus looking at Elisa and just goes, "She's a woman, therefore I will win her."
Yeah, there's this kind of like back and forth in a sing-songy
Oh,
fashion
he's got
between.
yet another song. Oh my god, they're so
And this is
bad.
the weirdest one, I think, because it's him and Dami, which, if you remember, is his little
and
metal
himself.
dummy. So it's his song sung with himself. So it's his little kind of like split personality crazy cabin fever guy at this point.
Right.
Also rapey and misogynistic, so
we
he's
have,
got a
we
whole
have, we
bag
have a
of crazy
whole
going on.
deal. We have a whole bag of problems in this show. We have sexism, we have misogyny, we have mental illness. I mean, we're just
That's
not being
addressed.
diagnosed or treated. We are just running
Straight up
the
thievery.
fucking gambit in terms of things that were probably taboo in the late 70s that people were not willing to address. This was the era where people are just like, yeah, just rub some dirt in it and walk it off. I don't see what you're... Or the one that I hate is, why don't you just buck up? Ugh.
Buck up,
hate
champ. So at this point, Alyssa's been captured, and I think a certain family duck comes into play here. Joe?
Yeah, the family anthropomorphic duck who didn't need to be in this movie at all.
Well, he's only in about
Witnesses
6
the
seconds.
kidnapping and, runs home to tell everyone about it. It could have been tightened up a lot there.
I just love that the groundhog says it like he knows this duck personally. He's like, luckily for Alyssa's sake, this family duck was hanging out entertaining some friends and went back and told everybody. So at this point, the whole family kind of gathers around and they go up to Miserable Mountain. Raveneau is leading the charge. He's pulling the sled with all the other idiots in tow behind him, and they're going to assault Miserable Mountain. The problem is they've tried this before. The front of Miserable Mountain is super slick and
Super
steep and
slippery.
icy, and they just weren't able to do it. Well, they didn't have Raveneau before, so he does some sort of crazy green arrow move and just...
He's got his sweet crossbow.
That's right. He just kind of grappling hooks his way up there. No big deal. But then rather than follow him up there and help him fight the 1,000 robots soldiers that are up there... Oh, I'm sorry, the Knights.
Knights.
I apologize. The Knights. You can kill all of them, by the way, because they're just robots, so it's totally cool. Rather than follow him up that line, Jack and Snip go around the backside because now they've finally figured out, oh, maybe the backside of this mountain is a little less steep. They haven't tried it for the past 6 weeks. Oh, God. So they end up getting captured. Raveneau ends up killing all these Knights, but he also gets injured.
But he
So
saves
now
the
you've got
girl.
He does save the girl, and then she saves him because she takes him back to her sweet, sweet clay bed and tends to his wounds. Meanwhile, they just leave Jack and Snip totally in the wind. They're just like, well, they got captured. They're probably dead. So
I think
we're just gonna go
Raveneau's
back home.
line of his arm in a sling, and he's sitting in the bed and he's thanking Elisa for helping him, and he's like, "I'll be better by spring." And I'm sitting there like, what? Like, how?
Well, he just straight up he's laying there. She's tending to his wound, and he's just like, "I'm gonna get better. Spring's gonna get here. We'll get married. Then we'll have babies.
This is moving
and then I'll retire."
really
And she's
quickly.
like, wait, hold
This is
on.
moving really quickly.
But she's totally fine with it. She's ready to go. The only thing is she's kind of sad that Jack's not around. Not because she loves him, because she wants
Right.
to invite him to the wedding. That's it. She's like, I kind of miss that little guy. He was like a real special friend, which if Jack could hear that, it's just like, fuck, man, that just
Yeah.
takes me back to high school. Every time you
Exactly.
hear that.
This is the worst
So
high
let me-
school.
Let me
Digs you
ask
right in
this
the heart,
question to. wanna
Shoot,
say
how many
no.
times have I heard that in my life?
I know the answer.
I don't keep a count,
Uh,
Sean.
I want to ask.
I have a notebook,
wanna ask
but I don't
Joe,
keep a count.
Had
Mhm.
Jack heard that comment, do you think that the end of the program would have ended the way that it did? Or would have he gone on...
No, he would have gone freezing people left and right. He would have
He
gone
would've
on a
gone
rampage. Yeah.
It would have been Jack Frost, that live-action horror comedy, instead of this.
God, yeah.
That's a movie. for
Why
the
not?
So at this point, Jack and Snip are trapped up in... Is Holly with
Yeah,
them too?
she's
I think
captured.
Holly's captured.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
She
Yeah,
doesn't
she
do
does
it.
It's like
not-
she's a
just
little
along for
Nerf
the ride.
football
Yeah.
just tucked into his arm nook.
She's in their football. So at this point, they're imprisoned. And the only way that they can think to get out of it, Jack's like, well, I can call down a snowstorm, trap all the Knights that Kubla Kraus is going to send into the village to decimate the village and wipe everybody out. He's got 1,000 of them. I need to stop them here. So he tries whistling to call down a snowstorm. I think Snip tries to do something as well, and it's not working because they're humans. So at this point, Jack, without really giving it a second thought, just calls out to his dad, and they're all turned back into sprite. So he kind of gives up his humanity.
He
in order to
sacrifices
save
his human form in order to save his
Exactly.
friends. Christ figure.
Yeah, the weirdest thing was when they crucified him on a weird icicle cross, and then just jammed an icicle crown in his head.
Yep.
and then stabbed him a bunch of times with icicles. It was a little over the top, but it went past the censor, so I guess it's fine. Oh, and then they buried him in a Wampa cave. That was strange.
It was a good tie-in though with Star Wars because
It was a
episode
really good
1 had
tie-in,
just
yeah.
had come out at that point.
Well,
Yeah,
like
episode
New
4.
Hope,
Thank you.
Episode 4. Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that was a little strange. But so he's back to being a sprite. Now this is the second time that his father does not deny him. So he does not deny him 3 times. Jack goes back up, and his dad's like, "Well, spring's coming, so sorry, but you can't call down a storm because spring's here." And how do I know spring's here, Joe?
Because, pardon me, Pete, he's going to keep an eye on that little rodent, and if he sees his stupid shadow, then hey, presto. Well, no, if he doesn't see a shadow, then I guess spring's here. But anyway.
It's the whole point was that, like, he has this cue. His Father Winter is like, "Hey man, like, yeah, I don't decide when winter's over. I got to take cues
No.
from my boss too, and I take cues from nature." So I was expecting some like grand explanation of like Mother Nature who like dropped him a
Nope.
memo and was just like, "It's springtime, bitches."
Rodent.
No. He takes his cue from a groundhog who wakes up.
I feel like
So, yeah.
I feel like the chain of responsibility at some point something got real screwed
Something
up.
got messed up. Some chain of command
I'm
here.
sorry. You mean to tell me that a groundhog controls a cloud god who makes winter?
Mm-hmm.
You know what?
Omnipotent cloud
Let's
god.
do it.
Yep. Let's do it because that's how Groundhog Day got started. And that kind of brings it back around to the point that I was like, wait, is this where they're going to end this damn story? Did it feel like a false ending
yeah.
to you guys at all?
There were so many false endings in this
Yeah,
thing.
there were a few. It was like the last.
It's like
Hobbit
nothing but
movie.
exposition and endings.
Yeah, nothing happens at all. It's just a lot of description and setup, and then it's concluded. The end. But there's actually so Jack now asks his dad for a little bit more time, and Father Winter tells him like, "I can't because this groundhog thing." So then Jack's like, "Well, all right, I'll go talk to this groundhog. We'll set up some sort of deal where maybe I give him my magic shadow, and then we get 6 more weeks of winter." Lo and behold, that's exactly what happened because the groundhog just wants to hang out and sleep for another 6 weeks. And that's the
All
deal.
he's needed is an excuse this whole time.
Yeah, so this entire show at this point has been an excuse for that groundhog to get an additional 6 weeks of sleep. That's what this entire
The ruse.
machination has been about. From Kubla Kraus to the raping of Elisa to the ice cave sacrifice of Jack Frost. It's all been so a little groundhog can sleep 6 more weeks. It's insane. Everything's insane. But it's not over yet, kids. We're getting there. So Jack now has 6 weeks to shut Kubla down, right? So he calls upon this storm and he just storms.
He hits
as
him with
long as
everything
he
he's
can.
got.
Gives it with everything he's got, but only on Miserable Mountain. Like the
Right.
town's totally fine. They're fine.
Yep.
They're still flush with ice money. Everything's fine, but they're not getting like inundated with all this snow. So Kubla, his entire castle is just covered in snow. His robot knights are like stuck in snow, but he's only got those 6 weeks. So Jack, once nature kind of comes back and says, "Hey, look, I really got to bring spring in at this point." Jack once again goes to his dad and says, "Just make me human one more time, and I'll go back down and I'll fix all this." And of course, his dad is just like, "Yep, you totally got it. I'm going to give you 1 hour to get all those things that I told you about."
Again,
which remember is a house, a horse, a bag of gold, and a wife
impossible.
in 1 hour. It would be impossible, except for the fact that previously, when he brought this up with the townspeople, with Mama and Papa, they were just like, "Okay, first of all, idiot, there are no more houses for sale. That's why you have to live with us and be a tailor. The only horse in town is a metal monstrosity that was created by Kubla Kraus. There is no gold because he has it all, and the only like eligible bachelorette in town is already basically fiancéed to Ravenna the Golden Knight. So you're out of luck."
Yep.
And now he has 1
Marry
hour
that
to
duck.
do it. Marry the prolific duck. Just marry into the family with that duck.
Yeah. Seems
Guys,
like a
don't
nice
you
family.
remember when that
Problem
Christ-like
solved.
figure married a duck in the Bible?
That one was written out, I think.
It's right in those Dead Sea Scrolls.
The Gospel of the Duck. The Gospel of the Duck was not in any translation that I remember. So now he's got 1 hour, right? Now remember that this dummy still has to come into play.
Oh God, yeah.
Okay? And this castle has had snow upon its roof for the last 6 months or more, like heavy, heavy snow.
Totally
Basically
key.
rotted all the timbers away. All right? So Jack comes back down as a human and goes right to the castle, where, again, lo and behold, the roof just collapses on Kubla Kraus and basically knocks him out. Knocks him out long enough that Jack is able to steal his dummy, do a spot-on impression of Kubla Kraus. Was it voiced by the same guy?
Yeah.
Is that how they got around that? Because they made a joke like, oh man, his impression was great, so it had to be the same guy. And he like props Kubla up on the window, takes little Dami up there, and then orders all the Knights to just march off the edge of a cliff so that they all just smash themselves to pieces down in the valley. You'd think that'd be all well and done, but then Kubla Khan. I knew it was coming at one point.
It was gonna happen.
Damn it, so close, guys. So Kubla Kraus comes back. Do you remember what happens when he tries to attack Jack? Either of you?
He just like misses him and flies out the window.
There's no action that happens in this whole fucking thing. He completely dives right by him out the window, and then his Father Winter, for whatever reason, is like, well, I don't want to kill this guy.
They couldn't show violence, I'm sure,
exactly,
so they just blast him off into.
They send this little like icy zephyr down to just spirit him away to wherever.
A tender adult relationship between a man and a duck, but they can't have a guy fall out of a window to his death. I don't understand the world we live in.
It'll change someday. We just got to keep trying. Be agents of change. Keep writing your anthropomorphic duck fanfic. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. Okay, so pretty much Jack's got everything that he needs, right?
Because he steals the gold. Yep. He's got Kubla's house. He takes his horse thing.
Yeah. What's he need? All he needs is a wife. Oh, hey, there's a perfectly good wife chick waiting down in
I'm just uncomfortable that we're just like perfectly good wife chick.
Well, that's why I did it, because
the
that's
very definition of objectification. She's literally a checklist item on his becoming a real boy list.
She is. A third time for this list. But now she's finally free. Oh, wait. Now, by the time he gets there, she's already in her wedding gown with creep-ass Rabbino standing right next to her.
Locking it down.
To her, as she's getting, like, dressed, man. He is not taking any chances. Well, she's already been, kidnapped and almost raped once. Who knows what this Jack creep is doing? So here's the saddest part, though, man. Like, he talks to Papa, and Papa basically says, like, I don't think she was ever in love with you, Jack. She told me that she loved Jack Frost, and I know she's in love with Sir Rabineau. Don't think she ever mentioned you in that same kind of sentiment. He's just like, well, shit. And just turns back into a sprite and pretty much goes on about his way.
Right there.
Yeah. That's the ender. That's the knockout punch. When the dad says, like, nah, I'm not even worried about you because she never even mentioned you. Like, that's the last thing you want to hear, man. That's so sad. Do you guys remember what he does as like a parting gift before her wedding?
He gives her terminal frigidity.
He does. Yeah. Just frozen from the inside out for life.
Yeah.
Kind of the
She's just
terminal frigidity. I don't know. It's terrifying. Slightly sweeter version. He kind of gives like a kiss to her bouquet of roses, and they freeze over, and the Knights kind of creeped out. He's like, "What the hell was that?" She's just like, "Oh, it's just a kiss for the bride from an old friend," and it's kind of sweet, but also like really sad at the same time.
But she doesn't know that Jack Snip was Jack Frost, and the whole thing
it's never revealed
this,
to her.
like,
She never puts
dream.
it together. Never puts it together, man. Now he goes back up to like Wintry Kingdom and just does his sprite thing, and maybe creeps on another girl another day. I don't know.
How many times?
I think
just
Father
goes into
Christmas
Star
would
and
sign
Rise
on
of the
for
Guardians
that.
after this.
What'd you say, Joe?
Yeah.
I think Father Winter would sign on for that. Like, oh yeah, we'll try this again. You just need to get me a, and it turns it into a scavenger hunt of other objects.
Exactly. Yeah. I need a 64-inch TV. I need a
blonde
Xbox
pubic
One.
hair.
Do you think at some point that
more.
Jack would sort of address this with Father Winter, and Father Winter would be like, "Look, Jack, you've gone down a couple times. It's now my turn."
Oh no, Jack Frost 2.
Papa's home.
Father Winter a go-go. Oh God, Father Winter gone wild.
Oh man,
I don't want to see that. Normally, I want to see these things, not that one. That's it, ladies and gents. Do you guys have any final thoughts for Jack Frost here before we get to our recommendations, reviews?
Well, one thing I'd like to add from the Wikipedia and
Yes, sir.
IMDb deep dive is just a couple of also known as aspects to this.
Okay.
Um, so Father Winter / Kubla Kraus, same voice there as Paul Frees,
Oh, okay.
who had a tremendous career over 30 years. But the most notable thing for him, in my opinion, is that he is the voice at the Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean at Disney World.
Wow. I love that his last name's Freeze, by the way, for this.
Oh man, you're so right.
Is it
That
Victor
totally
Freeze?
got by me.
All good.
Oh.
It is
No,
not.
no, Paul Frees. Pardon Me, Pete, as we mentioned, is Buddy Hackett, also voices Scuttle, and huge career as a comedian. Um, the reporter is actually a real reporter. He
Oh,
was
that's cool.
the Today Show for years. Snip is Don Messick, who is everyone in everything. He's Papa Smurf. He's Dr. Quest. He's in Transformers. He's in G.I. Joe. He's Boo Boo from Yogi Bear. He's Bam Bam from the Flintstones. He's Scooby Doo. He's in the Jetsons. He's in Tiny Toons. He's been in everything. It's phenomenal. And he's
Thank you so
Snip,
much
who
for
could
that
have been
rundown.
cut from the story completely.
Of all the things that could have been cut from the story, that duck, Ollie, the Hail Fellows,
Sweet
so many
sisters.
things. But with that in mind, Joe, since you brought this to our attention, I'm going to ask, do you recommend this for the folks out there to check out?
For the 8 and under crowd, absolutely.
Nice.
It's a really good fun time. I don't think it ages as well. There are the Christmas movies you can still watch as an adult and still get a kick out of. This one doesn't do it for me anymore.
Gotcha. Sean, how
It was
about you?
interesting. I would say if you're looking for something silly and after a couple pints of Christmas cheer and you want to watch something maybe that you've never seen before, maybe that's a little bit more on the fringe regarding these Rankin Bass specials, then check it out if you are a Rankin Bass fanatic. Otherwise, I'm glad that I watched this. Would I watch this again? I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would.
I think for me, since I hadn't seen it before and I was really kind of impressed with how childlike and innocent and magical a lot of the story elements were, I really liked it. I might actually make this kind of part of my annual just kind of holiday movie watching, special watching. I might try to put this in the rotation. And then we'll see how quickly I get tired of it. But I thought it was a lot of fun. It did not have as many issues as Rudolph did. Rudolph was probably a little bit more of a complete story. This thing had a lot of kind of loose frayed ends, but it wasn't nearly as terrible for children as Rudolph actually was in retrospect. There's also, I want to make a quick note, there's another Rankin Bass special. I mean, there's a bunch, but there's another one that's actually done in kind of an anime style of animation called The Stingiest Man in Town. And it's a take on A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
No
And
effing way.
it is almost unwatchable. It's really just irritating. The songs that are in it are just, it's not good. It's not good, which is disappointing. But for this one, I really like the animation style. I like that it's a little bit lesser known than Rudolph. I like that it's not as commercial. And yeah, they still do play it around this time of year. It's weird that it's a Groundhog's Day special episode.
Yeah,
That's
it's
strange.
Groundhog's Day. There's a lot of focus on Christmas. I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel like it's just quite
We're just
I
we're
feel
gonna
like
call it our
feel like
wintry mix.
it's a little
I feel like
unfocused.
this cartoon also could have been a justification for Easter.
Yeah. Well, if you watch Rise of the Guardians, an animated
Right.
CG film that came out a few years ago, they basically make Santa Claus, Jack Frost, the Easter Bunny, and I think like Spring in some sort of sense, into superheroes. Basically, I like the flick. It's not the best thing you'll ever see, but it's fun. So it's a different kind of take on this Jack Frost thing. So check out Rise of the Guardians too. But for another opinion on this particular one, I'm going to turn it back over to Joe, who's going to read us a user review for Rankin Bass's Jack Frost.
All right, my friends laugh at me, but I love it. Ice Bean from Knoxville, Tennessee says, I watch this thing religiously no matter what time of year it is. Ask my friends. They'll roll their eyes and say, yes, she really does watch it all the time.
Ice Bean, we have asked your friends, and yes, they did say that. So thank you for watching that with us. Ice Bean. All right, guys. Well, this is actually our last show of the year. So before we wrap everything up here, I just want to say, Joe, thank you so much for coming back. This is, I believe, your third episode now.
That's
Thank
right.
you,
It's been a
Joe.
pleasure, fellas. I
Yeah.
really appreciate being here.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you again, as always, to Sean, our co-host, our producer, our man about town, our Tumblr manager. He does so many things that I can't even keep track of all of them. So thank you again, buddy, for another great year here. This is crazy that we're
Oh,
coming up
man.
on episode 100.
Yeah,
in the
I got to
weeks to
thank
come.
you as well, Dave, for all the things that you just listed about me. Dave does an enormous amount of things behind the scenes to get the show up and running, and so I could not do this without you, man. So thank you.
Awesome. Now's the time for some plugs and contact info. So, Joe, do you have anything coming up other than your New Year's plans, and maybe you want to share with the folks out there?
Shout out to another child coming
Congratulations,
in early
man.
January.
Wow! Congratulations,
Thank you
bud.
very much. But besides that, I'm still just a private citizen, and you can catch me on Twitter. I'm at
Nice.
Crazy Joe Gallo.
Awesome. Sean, what about you? What do you
I
have
just
coming up?
concluded a 6-week run of shows for Washington Improv Theater, and we will start off another run of shows in January, February, and March. But before that, I'm going to be performing in San Diego over Valentine's Day weekend for the San Diego Improv Festival. I'll be performing there on February 13th at, I believe, 9 or 9:30. You can check it out online. Just search for San Diego Improv Festival. Hope to see you on the West Coast. And you can find me, as always, on the grams and the turs at Sean Paul Ellis. And
I really just want to shorten it to
Grampter?
like Grampter or something.
Insta-tweets.
Insta-tweets.
in,
Grampter
on
or
Insta-tweets
Insta-tweets. Something
at
for
Sean
you.
Paul Ellis. And David, what are you up to, buddy?
Perfect. Well, first of all, we're going to have all that information up on our website for you guys to check out, so you don't have to worry about jotting down those dates. We'll have it supplied for you. As for me, you can find me on Twitter, not Instagram, at Dr. Claw MD. You can also find me over at collider.com. We've got a lot of cool new content at the end of the year here, and then once the new year hits, we're going to be rolling just like normal. So I will be recapping shows like The Flash, Arrow, Walking Dead. I think that'll be it for me, but we have some other mid-season shows that are coming up that some other fine folks will be covering as well. So you can check us out over at collider.com. If you're interested in finding out more about Saturday morning cartoons, you can do so at our website, SaturdayMorningCartoons.com. Remember, that's morning with a U. You can also follow us on Twitter at MorningTunes. Check out Sean's handiwork on Tumblr, SaturdayMorningCartoons.tumblr.com. We've got a Facebook page. We have a YouTube account. You can listen to us each and every week through iTunes and Stitcher. And you can also send us an email just to say, hey, you like the show, or give us a suggestion for a future cartoon, SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. Now, since we're wrapping up this year, we are going to be headed into our second round of New Year's Nicktoons. Sean, buddy, which one are we going to head off
We are kicking
2016
off
with this time around?
2016 New Year's Nicktoons with Kablam!
Kablam! This, you might not know this one. It's a weird animated
watched a
kind
lot
of
of
variety
Kablam.
show. So
I love Kablam.
I love Kablam. It's going to be fun to revisit and see if it holds up. I am not holding out hope, to be honest with you. This one could be rough. So definitely come back and join us. I hope you guys all have a safe and happy holiday, a safe and happy new year. Please come back and join us and listen again Saturday Morning Cartoons
Thank
in
you, guys.
2016.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.